Our reading this morning is Nothing is Static by Reverend Manish Mishra Marzetti. That's a good name. The ground shifts, sometimes slowly, sometimes like an earthquake, reminding us that the solidity we often love and seek is an illusion. The crumbling dust of the desert plains, the moist fertility of farmlands, the eroding coastline of tidal shores, all are changing. Committees dissolve or are created, leaders retire or step away, ministers come and go, bylaws are amended. New experience leads to new truths which foster evolution, the natural course of life always pushing us towards greater understanding of what it means to be human. Everything about our existence points towards change, flexibility, and dynamic recreation. And it's hard because change involves loss. Can we hold the losses well while not holding ourselves back? The ground shifts, sometimes slowly, sometimes like an earthquake. Nothing is static.
For 484 days in the mid-2010s, I sang all of the hymns in our hymnals, singing the journey and singing the living tradition. One per day from both hymnals. My commitment to myself was to sing them in order, no matter what the occasion. That meant, of course, that the songs were out of season. I was singing Christmas songs in spring and Easter tunes in late summer, which sometimes added curiosity and occasionally delight to the process. I sang happy morning songs in November of 2016, which was less delightful. But I also sang songs that just hit wrong. I began to notice lyrics that included binary language or ableist language or the language of colonialism or empire, or songs that could be misappropriated if not used carefully. And what I realized in those 484 days, a number I'll never forget, by the way, what I realized in singing through those hymnals, which were lovingly assembled decades ago with broad charges to make our hymns more inclusive, I realized I was witness to the shifts in our theologies, our congregational life, and our work of justice. 33 years ago, the Cold War had just ended, and a new uncertain future lay ahead. The specter of the 21st century and the 50th anniversary of the Unitarian Universalist consolidation loomed in the distance. And 20 years ago, in the wake of 9/11 and the new Afghanistan and Iraq wars, we were considering division, hate, war, and peace. The songs represented where we were then, before we understood the damage of misappropriation, before we deeply questioned oligarchy and empire, before we understood that gender is in fact not binary, before we seriously grappled with the 400-year history of racism and oppression and white supremacy. When we hold these hymnals in our hands, we are holding evidence of the moral arc of the universe bending toward justice. It's evidence that we are growing, changing, becoming more and more expansive, and seeking more and more justice. And now we have a new digital hymnal with new songs that feel fresh today and are responding to the world as it is now. Songs that address the moment and encourage us to lean into liberation, to be more expansive, more grounded in our faith. And I wonder sometimes, what will we think of them in 20 or 30 years? Our hymns, our sung theology gives us tangible evidence of transformation. And as my friend Manish Mishra Marzetti says, nothing is static. And that can be scary, especially if you're a person who kind of thinks there are things that are solid, that there are things that don't move, right? The discomfort of change can be real. And right now, when everything around us is this whiplash of change, there is a longing and a need for the familiar. It matters that even in this universe where nothing actually is static, if the physicists are right, that we find those things that are steady, that are holding us. So I think a lot about how people like me love cozy British mysteries, right? We love the characters, the gorgeous scenery. We love the regularity of it. The details of each mystery are different, but the basic format is the same. And we know the detective or the amateur that we love will solve it in the end, right? It's why we love the original Law and Order. We knew at the halfway point, the case would be handed over and we'd go from procedural to courtroom drama. It's why Saturday Night Live is 50 years old. That formula has remained since the start. Cold open, live from New York, it's Saturday night. A monologue, a ad parody, sketches, the weekend update at the top of the hour, the musical guest, more sketches, the musical guest again, and then gathering on the stage to say goodbye. These predictable patterns that give us something to hold on to. And for people of faith, this is why many appreciate a regular ordered liturgy, like a Catholic Mass. The power of the Mass is that it is the same week after week. And then what transforms them is internal, how people feel, what they bring in, how they connect to the words that day, to the prayers that day, to the familiar that day. In less regular settings like ours, we still have some markers, although we often move them around. Guilty. Our biggest marker as a faith is the lighting of the chalice. It signals a time that's different from other times, whereas Victoria Safford writes, wild content can race around inside it. And while our liturgies are never so regular as the Mass, there is something that holds us here that is familiar and regular, that allows us the freedom to transform. Now, of course, transformation requires discernment. We value a responsible search for truth and meaning we're not swayed necessarily by somebody else's agenda, and we are pretty good about not getting sucked into propaganda or paths that take us into directions that lead us to harm others. But real transformation takes all the time it needs to connect, to align, to highlight, to shift our culture, to shift our thinking, to shift our spirits. Now, a small group of us have been working this year with Paula Cole-Jones to help congregations shift culture to be even more welcoming and expansive, to live and breathe anti-racism and anti-oppression, to go beyond learning and get it deep into our bones. The work has been gentle and at times mysterious. I'm the first to say her process with us has been unclear at times. But what she's been modeling is that slow, considered process that transformation usually takes. For example, we didn't just wake up one day and realize some of our hymns might be problematic. The questions cropped up gradually over time with spidey senses going, I wonder about this. And the lessons took a bit to sink in. And then one day maybe we realized we can't sing some of them anymore, and we don't even now consider them when looking for hymns to sing. White folks didn't just read Robin DiAngelo's book, White Fragility, and become perfectly anti-racist white people. The work took time, still takes time as we grapple internally, as we begin to see the world differently, as we open ourselves to stories and experiences we never considered. And then one day we realize we don't think that way anymore, and we're more naturally given to better behaviors and thus deeper covenants with the people of color in our lives. Transformation is slow, and it is about adaptation. Bit by bit, in my mind, I see the beginning of the movie Contact. Slow moves, Ellie, slow moves, right? As the UUA's value statement says, we adapt to the changing world. We covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritages, never complete and never perfect. Never perfect. Yeah. Whether that's what we can do in the world to affect change, or what we can do to meet the moment in our community, or what we can do to change ourselves, it's always about adaptation. Those small, sometimes imperceivable actions that make a real difference. Think about the changes we saw by intentionally engaging with small wins. No one project on our list was huge, well, except maybe the kitchen cleanup. But little changes, little cleanups here, little adding things, little making sure things were taken care of, they made such a difference, not only to our space, but to our spirits. We transformed a bit through that project. And for those thinking there wasn't a big transformation, the truth is there isn't always a big showy transformation. We aren't suddenly a butterfly with beautiful wings. And I think shows like Queer Eye and Extreme Home Makeover and others make us think that transformation has to be big and dramatic in order to be real. But real transformation is small. Real transformation is love saying, slow down and listen. Notice what is happening. Notice what we're feeling. Notice the wholeness and interdependence of it all. And then love says, notice who is hurting and listen. Notice how love can manifest in those quiet, tiny moments. How love manifests in the smallest of ways that change just one moment. And then the next, and the next. And then notice how love transforms us and awakens our senses. And then notice how love transforms someone else, and how love manifests within and between and beyond us. And then notice what we have to build for the moment so that people can survive and thrive and transform the lives of someone else, and so on and so on. Transformation happens moment by moment, bit by bit, grain by grain, as it were. The Tibetan Buddhists make sand mandalas as a spiritual practice. They start with an empty table and measure out the space, and they begin at the center. And together they create a stunning mandala with incredibly intricate patterns. This can take days and days with constant chanting and meditation as they work. And once it's done and the prayers are said, they sweep it away with a broad motion. Because for the Buddhists, the art of the mandala wasn't the important part. The important part was the meditation and creating for a moment a bit of beauty that affirms inner transformation. Well, we aren't so focused or concentrated here. We don't have a design, and we aren't about to spend days and days creating something. But our table here is a start. An imperfectly fuzzy mandala base that is utterly incomplete and only represents a bit of me. this mandala that we will create as ours. Meditation on our individual paths of transformation, our collective transformation, and our hopes for the unexpected ways love might transform us. What will you add? Which color? There are a bunch of colors in little bottles circling the mandala. Notice how it changes when you add a color or move a spoon through it. Something gentle that isn't violent, like blowing it away. But even notice how shaking the table might change it. As you approach the table, and I hope you all will, think about the ways that you have transformed, what feels undone, what you notice about the transformation of others. Listen to heartache, listen to grief, listen to gladness, listen to hurt, listen to joy. Add a little sand, gently paying attention to what others are creating, working together to transform this tray of sloppy, fuzzy sand into something. It may not be exactly what you all envisioned, but it may be greater because you are transforming sand into beauty together. You're invited to come up. Wow, this mandala is breathtaking. I see a journey, many paths, many movements, and more the ways in which we have changed each other. Their lines of connection, journeys squiggling through places where a heart might be broken, places where a heart is whole. It's a remarkable thing, this mandala, this work of love has transformed us. It is almost like a map, a journey in progress. What might it look like if you saw your own transformation as a journey in progress? What are the markers? What are the moments? Some of those moments, unspoken, are speaking through the sand. I love this piece, which I'll close the sermon with, again from Victoria Safford, her own description of transformation, her own map of a journey in progress. She says, "Here is where I found my voice and chose to be brave. Here's a place where I forgave someone against my better judgment. And I survived that and unexpectedly, amazingly became wiser. Here is where I was once forgiven, where I was ready for once in my life to receive forgiveness, to be transformed. And I survived that also and lived to tell the tale. This is the place where I said no more loudly than I ever thought I could. And everybody stared, but I said no loudly anyway because I knew it must be said, and those staring settled down into harmless, ineffective grumbling. And over me, they had no power anymore. Here's a time, and then another. And I laid down my fear and walked right on into it, right up to my neck, into that rolling water. Here's where cruelty taught me something. Here's where I was first astonished by gratuitous compassion and knew it for the miracle it was, the requirement it is. It was a trembling time. And here, much later, where I returned the blessing clumsily. It wasn't hard, but it was unaccustomed. It cycled round, and as best as I could, I sent it back out, past the gift along. The circular motion, around and around, had no apparent end. Here's a place, a murky puddle where I have stumbled more than once and have fallen. I don't know yet what to learn there. On this side, I was outraged, and the rage sustains me still, and it clarifies my seeing. And here's where a warm breeze caught me. A warm breeze in late winter, a bird song in late summer. Here's where I was told something was wrong with my eyes, and I see the world strangely. And here's where I said, yes, I know, I walk in beauty. Here is where I begin to look with my own eyes and listen with my ears and sing my own song, as shaky as it is. Here is where, as if by a surgeon's knife, my heart was opened up. And here, and here, and here, and here. These are the landmarks of transformation. And so may we honor the landmarks of our transformation and be open to the journey in progress.